In Mark chapter 13, beginning at verse 32, I take it to be that there is a transition from what Jesus had been talking about up through verse 31. Rather than speaking of those days, as he did in verses 17, 19, 20, and 24, he speaks of that day in verse 32. He says, "But of that day, or that hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." Rather than telling them the sign by which they could know when the time was coming, as he did in verse 14, and by saying that it would certainly happen within that generation, as he said in verse 30, he tells them that no one knows when this appointed time will occur. Only the Father knows. Now, good Bible students disagree with that. But either all of chapter 13 is about the destruction of Jerusalem, or it is up until verse 31, and then talking about the second coming from verse 32 to the end of chapter 13. Regardless, the lesson applies to us in view of the second coming of Jesus. The parable of the servants that Jesus tells here carries an admonition. The master has gone, but he is returning, so be ready. Because the time is not known, constant attentiveness and faithfulness to our responsibilities is necessary. We do not know when the Lord will return. This teaching is for everyone, not just the disciples who were in the Lord's immediate presence. And so if there is anything lacking in our service to the Lord, we should fix it immediately, knowing that the Lord could return at any moment. We do not know when He will come, but He will come. And when He comes, there will be no opportunity to make correction. You could escape the judgment on Jerusalem by fleeing to the mountains, but one will not escape the day of the Lord. For we must all stand before the judgment seat of Christ to receive the things done in our body, whether they be good or whether they be bad, 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 10. Not knowing when the Lord will return ought to provoke us to diligent, faithful, and consistent service.